What's up guys, Ryan here from Mud Gunner. Today we are going to be talking suppressors. I know I have quite a few guns behind me and I'll kind of explain all that. But yeah, we're going to be talking suppressors today, and specifically what is the main difference for you as a buyer between a 30 cal suppressor and a 5.56 suppressor, and what are the pros and cons of both. I think I've been doing this long enough to kind of have a basic understanding and maybe help some beginners out, and I'll just kind of tell you my thought process behind it. So let's get into it. So when we're talking suppressors, there's a variety of calibers that you might be looking to suppress. I'd say some of the main ones that I see people suppressing for rifles would be 5.56, 300 blackout, 308. Now there's a lot of other ones, but those are probably the main three that I see. And we'll talk about why I think you should maybe start with a 30 cal can for your first can. So this was actually my very first suppressor, and this is a Silencer Co. Omega. I bought it back in like 2018. And it's been running pretty well for me. Now I mainly run this, well I only run this on a 5.56 and a 308. And I really like having this as a 5.56 suppressor. And even if you're not gonna suppress anything bigger than a 5.56, the pros of a 30 cal can are pretty great. So some of the main pros are, one, you can suppress multiple things. This is rated for 22 Win Mag all the way up to 300 Win Mag, which there's a lot of calibers in between there, more than I can probably name off. But yeah, it's rated for all of those. Now it's gonna do better on some calibers than others. Like 300 Win Mag's probably a little beefy for this. There are bigger suppressors that can handle a lot more pressure and more rounds through it. So I would say 300 Win Mag's probably a killer round for this, but it is rated for it. And 308's pretty good through it. Now, when you're into those bigger calibers, they're not very quiet. Like, it's somewhat manageable without earmuffs, but it's not something you would want to continuously do because it will damage your hearing. Even through 5.56, there are very few 5.56s that I would say are quiet. And honestly, none of them really are unless you're running specialty ammo that's either really expensive, hard to get, or not reliable. Because I have seen subsonic 5.56. I haven't shot any of it yet, but you figure 5.56 is normally a 55 grain to 77 grain round. The subsonic 5.56 I see out there is 110 grain, which is insane. But I don't think that's a staple diet for most people's ARs because, one, you probably have to tune the gun very specifically to that round, or it's expensive or hard to get. So when we're talking 5.56, it's not necessarily a quiet gun suppressed, but it can be effectively suppressed with 55 grain or 62 grain ammo, and 30 cal cans actually work really well for that. Now I do have a couple 5.56 specific cans. I have the Surefire RC2 that I've had for a few years now, and then I have this one. This is an Otter Creek OCM5. I think you guys can see that. But honestly, I mostly have 30 cal cans. So I have the Silencer Co. Omega here. I have a Dead Air Sandman S. I have this one. This is a SIG SRD 762. And then I have a Q Honey Badger. And then I actually just got this. This is a Surefire 762 Mini. And what's interesting about this, I'm going to be doing testing on this for you guys this next week. It's the exact same size as an RC2 5.56. The only difference is it's got a 30 cal hole in it. So it can handle 308, but I'm curious, and I'm going to do a video on this for you guys, is how it compares to a 5.56 RC2 can. So I'm going to shoot both of these in a video for you guys in the next week, and yeah, I'm curious to see how they do together. But I have shot this next to a lot of 5.56 cans, including this, and I can tell you, this is quieter than my RC2. Now, Surefire is not necessarily known for being the quietest can, but this can feels super solid. It does feel more solid than this. But you see, I've had this since 2018. It still looks very good, and I would say I take care of my stuff. But yeah, you can just feel like I guess the durability difference between these two. I feel like I could use this thing as a hammer. I don't feel the same way about this, but it all depends on what you're using it for, right? Like Surefire is a very durable military can. Silencer Co. at the time was one of the quietest rifle cans that I saw on the market, and again, that was 2018. A lot has changed since 2018 suppressor-wise, but yeah, that was a very well-known quiet suppressor at that time. At that time, there were not really any flow-through cans. You had Huxworks, which at the time was OSS. I don't know when they started, but OSS made all the Helix cans. That was the original flow-through cans. Now they are called Huxworks. I don't know why they changed their name. I'm sure there's a reason out there for that, but yeah, now there's so many flow cans. Silencer Co. has them, Surefire has them, Knights Armament. Like, there's so many flow-through suppressors nowadays. I don't own any yet, but I do plan on owning some here in the future because I'm not like just biased to like one type. I want to own them all and try them all out, and I'll tell you guys my information. But one thing I could tell you is 30 cal cans for the longest time were the original flow through for a 5.56 can, because what you have is a little bit less back pressure, because on a 5.56 can, that hole is just big enough for your 5.56 to go through. But on a 30 cal can, you have more gas escaping out the front. That doesn't make it necessarily louder. It does reduce the amount of pressure going back into your system though. So in a way, a 30 cal can on a 5.56 is a low back pressure suppressor, and it's somewhat flow through, because flow through cans, and I'm not a scientist by any means, but they vent some of the gas outwards. Like, so instead of just having your hole in the front, you see a lot of vents all around the side because it's letting more gas escape, so it's not so high pressure on your gun. But since a 30 cal can has that bigger hole, it just allows that to happen naturally on a 5.56 gun. Now, a 308 is not going to be very low back pressure. So what I originally have this for is I have it for an AR, but I also have this for my Tavor right here, which is 5.56, but I can also put it on my 308, which this is a Scar 17. So a 308 can is very nice because you can run it on multiple calibers, and all you need, depending on the can, as long as it's not a direct thread can, is the muzzle device for that suppressor. So on here, I have a flash hider and it just mounts to that. On here, I have a muzzle brake and it just mounts to that. So having a 30 cal can is very nice because it's modular between guns. And you can relatively take them off quickly. I'm not gonna say it's always pristine, because what happens is you get carbon lock on some of your muzzle devices. So when you shoot this, one, it gets really hot. So if you mag dump a couple mags through your 5.56, you're not gonna wanna just take it off and put it on your 308. It's gonna need time to cool down. But the other thing is, with certain mounting systems, like this screws on and then this clamps down and locks it in place. I have had it get stuck. Not stuck to the point where I had to shoot it off, but stuck to the point where it was a little bit of frustration getting it off. And I've had that with my Surefire too. So it's not just one mounting system is that much better than the other. Any suppressor can do it, and they all have somewhat of a locking issue because mounts, they build up a lot of carbon. Now, the only gun in my collection that I haven't had that issue with is my Q Honey Badger with a direct thread suppressor from Q. So there are some that probably don't have that issue, but yeah, that's the only exception where I can just always screw it on and off with my bare hand without any tools or any frustration, my Q Honey Badger. But this can, this is a SIG SRD762. I have it set up on a Rattler. This is a 30 cal can and it's rated for similar things. So I have it on a 300 blackout here, but this is also set up to run on my Virtus right here, which is a 5.56. Now the issue I have is this can gets super stuck on the muzzle device. It's on just a flash suppressor, and that can gets carbon lock like no other. It is very hard to take off. And I mean, the last time I tried to take it off, I just couldn't. So the way you potentially take it off if it's stuck with almost any of these is you shoot it and then maybe use whatever suppressor tool you need to potentially take it off. This has locking points and it comes with the tool to take it off. Surefire unfortunately does not. So as long as you're able to press and twist the collar, your worst case scenario is you have to shoot this off, which I've seen it happen, but I've never had to do it. So what this does is it goes on the muzzle device and then you twist this and it locks in place. So there's no tool to unlock it. You just have to press this and twist it off. But I have had that stuck before. I've always gotten it off, but the potential worst case scenario is we take this off and then have to shoot the can off because sometimes it just gets stuck. And again, any suppressor has that potential. The dead air here, I've seen these lock on before, and these are kind of interesting. So they do attach to either a flash hider or a muzzle brake or whatnot. You just have to put it on and then it twists and you hear it ratcheting on. I've heard the ratchets fail, or again, it gets stuck where you can't untwist it off. But the idea behind this is it just locks in place and you're good. I didn't fully tighten it down, but yeah, that's a 30 cal suppressor and it's really nice on a 5.56 here. And my main purpose for this one is just running it on 5.56s, but I still have all those options. So to take this one off, I just twist and it pops off. So the other thing, if you're gonna dedicate suppressors to guns, and that's kind of the point that I'm getting into, is I wanna get 5.56 cans to dedicate on guns, or certain guns like this one over here. If you're gonna start dedicating them to guns, maybe the mounting system's not as much of an issue for you. So this one is a direct thread suppressor because it attaches to a very specific mounting system. I can't put that suppressor on any other gun. I just got it specifically for that gun. And that's kind of been my thing with this RC2, is I wanted to start dedicating it on guns. But yeah, I still want to get more suppressors and kind of play around with them and see, because it's kind of like a car. Like you can buy certain parts for certain cars, but fine tuning them, like everything works slightly differently. So I mainly got this for my SCAR 16, but one thing I noticed is since it's a 5.56 can, it does add a lot of back pressure to my SCAR 16, and I don't have as much adjustments on my piston as I want. They do make pistons for that, but that's just more money to spend. I mean, I bought another suppressor, so I guess that's more money in itself, but I wanted to try this 30 cal can on there just to see if it would perform equally as far as like how quiet it is, but maybe a little bit softer shooting and less wear on my parts, because FN does not like it when you suppress their guns, unfortunately. But another option is those flow-through cans. I do want to get some of the Huxworks cans and maybe some other ones. Again, Surefire just came out with some. But until then, I'd say if you're trying to buy your first can, a 30 cal suppressor does make a very good choice. Because again, I can run this on a 5.56, I can run this one on my 308 here, or my 5.56, or 300 blackout. And even though there can be frustrations with some mounting systems, it's still pretty nice to have the option. I ran with this as my first rifle suppressor for maybe 3 to 4 years until I got some other ones. So yeah, I did have this one for a few years, and then the first 5.56 can I bought was this. But now I'm getting to the point, I'm gonna be trying a Yankee Hill suppressor here in 5.56 soon. I'm doing another RC2 in 5.56. And I'm just gonna kind of try them out on different barrel lengths and everything. So I know I've kind of like talked up 30 cal cans as the best can, but where 5.56 has its place is stuff like this from me. Again, the RC2 is an iconic suppressor, and it's very cool to run on like the SCAR 16 or a Mark 18, stuff like that. This one, this is a Gordon carbine build. So if you're not familiar with that, Gary Gordon, he was one of the snipers that was killed in Black Hawk Down, which happened in 1993. So this is a clone of his gun. This is a Type A Gordon carbine, and then this is an Otter Creek OCM5. I am going to paint this suppressor to match the gun, but I bought this specifically for this build. Other than that, it doesn't necessarily have a purpose for me. It can be used on other clone builds, but this is an over-the-barrel screw-on suppressor, and it is only 5.56. But this will not mount to any gun unless it has this specific mounting system. So that's kind of my purpose for some of these 5.56 cans, is just dedicated, you know, builds or clone builds and whatnot. Aside from that, I think my main focus is just 30 cal cans because they are the most modular, and because they're going to be less wear on your 5.56 guns. They'll have less back pressure. They'll still be just as quiet for the most part, because again, I'm curious how the RC762 will compare to the 5.56 one, because they are the same size, but this is a 30 cal hole. But aside from that, I know at least the Dead Air Sandman S and my Silencer Co Omega are just as quiet on 5.56 guns as my Surefire 5.56 and that one. So I haven't personally had experience with 5.56 cans that were that much quieter than 30 cal cans yet. So I know I'm kind of rambling on about this, but I just wanted to tell you guys, I highly recommend a 30 cal can for your first 5.56 suppressor. Or again, if you're going to suppress other calibers too, because 300 blackout is stupid quiet to suppress. I've done a bunch of videos on either my Q Honey Badger or my Sig Rattler here. The Sig Rattler is extremely quiet. And unfortunately, I've had a little bit of frustrations with it, but aside from that, again, 300 blackout's really quiet, and any of these cans would be perfect for a 300 blackout. But yeah, versatility is pretty nice, and I just wanted to show you guys these as some options for your first suppressors maybe, or if you already have some other suppressors and want to get some more. So far, I really like my Omega. I do like the Dead Air Sandman. I have seen issues with both of these cans from other people's point of views. I would say when Dead Air first came out with their Sandman, honestly, they had a lot of issues, but I haven't seen any recently. Surefire, like the new RC3s, I've seen issues on. The RC2 is a tried and true can. Same thing with their 7.62 one. So Surefire is kind of like the Glock of suppressors. The downside is they're kind of expensive. So these two are both more budget friendly. I mean, they're about 800 bucks, but they come with the 30 cal muzzle device, and muzzle devices for these are about $70. So they'll come with a 30 cal, but then if you need a 5.56 one, it's about 70 bucks. You buy either of these Surefires, they're over $1,000, and they don't even come with a muzzle device. You have to buy your own. And guess what? Their muzzle devices are like $150 and up. So even though they're nice suppressors, you're paying for the brand. So that's why I started with the Silencer Co, because it was a more budget-friendly rifle suppressor. And I know there's companies out there that make like $500 or less suppressors, but if you're gonna spend $200, and at the time, if you were gonna wait a year, I always thought it was worth it to spend money on quality. But now, with wait times being under a month, like I just got this RC762 right here in 5 days. So, I mean, I guess the cost to weight ratio is not as bad anymore, but still, I wouldn't want to just waste, you know, $400 and a $200 tax stamp on a crappy rifle suppressor. So I do think you pay for quality or name brand, and they come with pretty decent warranties, I'd say. So just wanted to talk to you guys about this. Thank you guys for watching, and stay tuned for my next video.